Hi guys, I am Rebecca, blonde in the belly of the beast. This is Robyn Riley, formerly of Critical Condition, and this is our channel that we were supposed to post on every week and haven't posted in 7 weeks. We both just realized. But I think that we should start by talking a little bit about why that is, because we're relatable AF, right? So you want to start first about why it's been so long since we posted?
Yeah, for sure. So Magnus has gone through like rapid development over the past month and a half. And it's hard to be able to pinpoint exactly why a baby is acting the way that they're acting, but I have some theories. I think that potentially because he's going through all of these sort of like cerebral active development phases, he's sleeping less at night. And so I'm up all night, basically. Yeah. He sleeps really well from 7:38 to 1 to 2 in the morning, which is a nice solid chunk of time. But after that, he's up every 60 to 90 minutes until, if I'm really lucky, 8 a.m. So that's been really, really brutal. Now, the other thing which could possibly be a part of this, which I'm not really sure about, is so we've talked about this, but I haven't actually spoke about it on the channel. My little boy was sort of gaining weight on a nice little curve for the first little while, and then he went through like a lengthways growth spurt and like a head circumference growth spurt, and he used up a substantial amount of his reserves and dropped several percentage points on the bell curve, not bell curve, but it's like a growth chart curve. Yeah. And I was super freaked out about that. Now we've gone to the pediatrician and talked to both my midwife, and I was really, really stressful because I was like, am I not feeding him enough? Should I start feeding him formula? Do I need to start feeding him purees and stuff? Like, what's going on? My doctor says it's probably, she's like 99% certain it's because of the growth spurt. But now because he depleted those reserves, I'm assuming he's just hungry a lot. Yeah. So he may be waking up to be fed. Yeah. In which case, like, it's not like I can just stick a pacifier in his mouth and walk away and feel okay with that, right? Yeah. Like, I if he's up and crying, I feel like I need to be feeding him. So yeah. I'm just shattered in general and really, really tired. And that's been the main reason why I just felt like I haven't had the mental stamina to talk about anything, or I had nothing to offer even.
Yeah, it definitely. While. And then it just feels disingenuous to be like, oh, my baby needs something, but I'm going to work instead. It's like this channel, people will understand. All the moms out there will understand. We're balancing being new moms, which is a massive transition, with the schedules of both of our babies. You just got to get your baby on that midnight to 10 a.m. uninterrupted sleep schedule. It's so perfect.
Does that exist?
Bad. Yeah, that's my baby's been doing it for a month and a half. Every single night.
Amazing. I'm so happy for you. That's like my dream. If I could have 3 wishes, I just wish for that 3 times, honestly.
And I feel so lucky. And then every time you talk about what's going on, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, let me just count my blessings right now. I mean, it might just be a phase, like Magnus is a phase, but as of right now, she's, and she's not even pooping in the night anymore. She's just sleeping.
Amazing.
All the way through. It's glorious.
What a little champ. I'm so happy for you.
I know. Are you a little champ? But we want to do what's right for our kids, and if the channel suffers, then that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's okay.
Yeah, I think most people know by now that it's if we're not here, it's because we're doing something that is genuinely more important. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then the only reason I'm able to stream on Sunday and Wednesday is because my parents live down the street from me, and so they just like come up and watch the baby, and then I leave halfway to feed the baby, and then come back up. And so we have been talking about how we are going to make a video about breastfeeding. It was like one of the first things that we wanted to talk about because we've had very different experiences, and we really want to appeal to moms that run the gamut, like that can't breastfeed, that and want to breastfeed, and then those that are formula feeding voluntarily, and that people that love to breastfeed like me. And Robyn and I are having very, very different experiences, and so I really want to talk about that. I guess I'll start by saying my baby was premature, and my milk didn't come in for like about 6 days. And one of the days she had to be formula fed at the hospital, and like there was nothing I could do. I wasn't producing any milk, and she had to be fed. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
That was it. And I was just devastated that this happened, and I was scared my milk wasn't going to come in, even though I did start producing colostrum while I was still pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, it happened at
That's
like
early.
pregnancy. Yeah, I
That's
was like,
great.
what is going on? This is so weird. And I called my midwife. She's like, oh, it's colostrum. So you do produce colostrum, which if you don't know, it's a very, very thick. It's like honey consistency, type of extremely rich in nutrients and vitamins. It's not breast milk. So pumping doesn't really help actually express the colostrum. So what I was doing in the beginning, and it was really pissing me off because they made me pump every 3 hours, even in the middle of the night. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to go to sleep, but I'm really happy I did it now. So like in the very beginning, you're pumping and you're not getting anything out, but you still have to pump because you just need that suction to help your milk come in, but you still want the colostrum to get to the baby. So the first tip that I wrote down for this is to get these medical syringes. Obviously they don't have a needle on them, but they just like, and to pump, even though you're not getting anything and the colostrum's not going to be filling into the bottle, but to actually express the colostrum into the syringes and then to pop that right in baby's mouth. That's the only way the baby is actually going to get the colostrum because it's too thick to go through the pumping device. So that was my first tip. But yeah, I did want to talk to moms that had to formula feed at some point, because I know what that feels like. And even though it was only one day for me, I was like, I'm failing. Like I'm failing as a mom, and I felt so guilty, and I didn't want. And so I was like, don't give her donor milk or formula if you can't avoid it. But it just was unavoidable. So I'm really sad still that had to happen a few times, but it did. And eventually my milk came in, and now I overproduce, and I still breastfeed about 8 hours a day is where we are right now.
Really? 8 hours a day?
Roughly 8 hours a day. Yeah.
She's such a good feeder. That's amazing.
Oh, you're fat, aren't you? You're obese. She's smiling at me. She's got milk on her face right now. Hey.
Hilarious.
Hey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what your early experience with breastfeeding was, right when Magnus was born?
I was really afraid that I wasn't going to be able to produce milk for some reason. I just like had it in my head that was a possibility, that I felt like it was a lot more common than I think it actually is, that you're just physically unable to produce milk. And my midwife was constantly telling me, like, you're going to be able to produce, don't worry about it. Stress is actually probably going to be a hindrance more than anything physically wrong with you. And I had purchased goat's milk formula just in case, as a backup. And I mean, I would have been perfectly happy to use that formula as well if I had to. I wasn't in the situation where I had to give formula, but I have a lot of confidence in the brand that I got. And there were times in the beginning where I was just like, is it that big of a deal if I give him formula one night so that I can just sleep and rest, and people were often telling me that, it's not going to kill the baby if one night you guys prepare a formula bottle and your husband formula feeds one night, and you get a solid night of sleep. And I was prepared to do that. Like, I can't say that I wouldn't be ashamed to give my baby formula, because if it happens, then maybe I would have. And pumping, the idea of pumping gave me a lot of anxiety in the beginning. But I was prepared to do it. It was my midwife that talked me out of it. She was like, you don't need that formula, first of all. And she's like really hardcore. I've spoken about it before. She's like German. She's been a breastfeeding consultant and a midwife for 20 years. She's got 6 kids of her own. She's seen it all. And she was like, you don't need the formula. And every time that I felt weak and was like, is it a big deal? Like, can I just like maybe he's not gaining weight fast enough, or because I had a lot of fear about that as well, that my milk wasn't fatty enough and he wasn't feeding enough. So she just kept telling me, no, you're doing fine. You have abundant milk supply. Like, there's literally nothing wrong. You're just psychotic. Like, just feed your baby. Just keep feeding your baby. You don't need to use the formula. But I was lucky he latched like within 20 minutes of being born, which was great for us. I had a pretty gentle birth. So he went on my boob straight away. My milk came in within 3 days, but he did lose, it was either 9 or 10% of his body weight. Within those 3 days, which is like just at the limit of what's acceptable, which was super nerve wracking. Within 4 days after my milk came in, he had surpassed He had regained that 10% and surpassed his birth weight. So we were in the clear.
Seriously? Oh, that's great.
And everything was fine. Everything was fine.
It took her 2 weeks to get back to her birth weight. I mean, she was 6'11" when she was born. And then after the 5 days of not producing any milk, she was down to 6'5".
Right.
And then it took her 2 weeks to get back up to 6'11", and now she weighs 14 pounds.
Yeah. That's like not that less than my boy's like, I think he's 15.5. Like, or no, maybe he's a little bit more than that now. I can't remember the last time that we weighed him. He was 15.5. So he's probably a bit more than that now. He's probably close to 16 now, but still, like, that's a big baby.
She's big, yeah.
I think that first 2 weeks, you know, if you can make it through that first 2 weeks and just getting your baby on your breast as much as possible, or doing like what you did with the pumping to make sure that your milk is coming in, like that tends to be like a really make or break portion of the breastfeeding journey for a lot of women, I think.
I think we should talk a little bit about why women give up when they don't have to. And I want to be clear that this does not apply to women whose milk never comes in, who have inverted nipples, who have issues like structural issues that mean that you can't breastfeed no matter what you do. Now, I know there are some women like that, but, and this is going to piss people off, but I think that the majority of women that think that they can't breastfeed actually can, and they have just been misguided by medical professionals, or they're just not trying hard enough or trying enough stuff. And that's not everybody. That's not everybody. It's a lot of people really can't breastfeed. But I hear a lot like, people have told me I have an insufficient milk supply. And this was, my mom told me that this is what everybody told her parents' generation. So like my grandmother's generation, everybody was told that they had an insufficient milk supply. First of all, I don't know how any doctor could even know that. Yeah. How could you do that? How do you, I breastfeed constantly. I have no idea how much milk I produce. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know how they can even be making that diagnosis. I think that they were in cahoots with like formula companies or something like that. And then I know that you've told me stories of people that were told that that formula was just better straight up better for the baby
because it's fortified. So yeah, like breast milk is deficient in vitamin D.
That's it though.
And then I think at 6 months, there's some science that says that an iron supplement would be necessary after 6 months. That's debatable. And there's a lot of people who say that the iron supplement can potentially have more risks than benefits. But like my mom was fed with carnation condensed milk because it was fortified with vitamin D. And that was like the reason why that my grandmother was told to do that, is because you don't have vitamin D. She needs vitamin D. We live in a northern climate. Do you want your baby to be vitamin D deficient?
And being vitamin D deficient is not a super big deal. I was talking to my pediatrician about it, and she's like, have you ever known a baby that's had rickets? Like ever?
Yes, that doesn't exist.
She's like, never in my career, not once have I ever seen a baby with rickets. And they just started in the last, I don't know, decade or 2 decades, supplementing babies with vitamin D. Like this is a new thing. My mom didn't do it with any of us. We're all okay. We're fine. It's debatable. I know. But this carnation thing, it's like, isn't that crazy? The will to survive in it for an infant, that they were able to make it on carnation milk, which is filled with sugar.
Totally. It's like 30% sugar. It's ridiculous.
My God.
It's so bad. It's so bad. And my mom was also told that formula was better. It was more sophisticated. It was like, science has taken breast milk and made it better, so your baby's going to have all these benefits for having formula. So I was formula fed, but my brother wasn't. My mom sort of woke up to the reality of formula being a substandard product because of the breast is best thing that happened in the 90s. So my brother got breastfed, but I didn't, unfortunately.
So along the lines of like what people are told. Okay, let's talk about first let's talk about the dumb things that lactation consultants told me to do, because I'm seeing in the live chat that somebody said, Miss B said, my poor breast got messed up when I started breastfeeding. The nurses who taught me had me doing some weird stuff that messed up his latch and gave us a whole bunch of issues. This actually happened to me too. Whoa. I had one really good lactation consultant and then like 4 useless ones. One of the lactation consultants didn't have any kids. I'm like, how could you? All right, fine. I can't even do this.
Don't trust you.
One of the things that one of the useless ones told me, I kept trying to like just hold the baby in a way that's natural to me. And they were like, no, don't do this. You have to do this stupid reverse football hold or whatever.
So the baby's like this way and the head's this way?
Yeah. And like my boobs, it's so bad. My boobs don't point in this weird direction. And like she's trying to latch and she's all like, and it's this weird angle and I can't do it. And I'm like, can't I just hold her normally? And they're like, no, don't do that. Like, don't just hold her in the crook of your arm. So what they wanted me to do was hold her head with my opposite arm and feed her on my opposite boob. And they're making me do this all the time. I'm like, this doesn't work for me. And so when they left, I would just do it the way that felt natural to me. Because people don't, you're so cute. People don't think about the angle at which the baby has to latch. And it needs to be like the baby comes from the front. So doing all these weird holds, like just do whatever is natural for you. And it'll work out. And then I'll talk about some things that they told me that were really helpful to get a good latch. They said, if it hurts really bad, the baby is not latched properly. And I think that's probably true. And then something else they told me to do was after a baby latches, if you couldn't tell if it was a good or a bad latch, if it felt like fine or whatever, you don't know what it's supposed to feel like, to look at the shape of your nipple. And if it's flat on any of the sides, that was a bad latch. That means that the nipple's not getting to the back of the baby's throat. And if it's shaped like a berry, that's good. If it's like round on top, that's good. Because that means it's getting like in all parts of the nipple is getting to the back of the baby's throat. And then they showed me a picture of how far back the nipple goes into the baby's throat.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like hitting the back of their throat. Like your nipple, you can see it when you pump, how far your nipple comes out.
Yeah.
But it really is getting in the back. So when you think about the logistics of that, use that to dictate how you hold the baby, because you need your nipple to be going all the way back to the baby's throat at a direct angle. It can't be like going like this.
Yes.
And that's something that pumping really helps you see. You help see like the structural integrity of the nipple, where milk is coming out. You can move it around and see what is producing the biggest flow.
Right.
So I do recommend that all moms at some point pump just to like see really what's going on there.
Totally. Yeah. I think another thing that would probably lend to the point you just made is that a latch sometimes can be structurally difficult for babies because of the tongue tie thing. Right. So like this is why breastfeeding consultants, they should be a standard part of postnatal care, in my opinion, because, if your baby isn't latching properly, which that happens pretty frequently, and breastfeeding is a skill that both you and your baby have to learn, right? So if there's a structural thing that's stopping your baby from being able to latch, regardless of your milk supply, regardless of your nipple shape, you guys might have some serious trouble latching. And if you don't know about this tongue tie thing, then, I mean, you're going to give up, because you're going to be like, my baby's losing weight. He needs to gain weight. He needs to eat, right? And that instinct is going to override any desire to want to breastfeed for whatever reason. So if you had a breastfeeding consultant there with you, they could take a look at your baby and determine whether this sort of surgery, it's like that little thing underneath your tongue. Sometimes I think it comes out too far and they can just laser it off real quick. It's apparently a pretty quick procedure. The babies, it obviously does hurt, but it's for a lot of moms, it's worth it to get the procedure done so that the baby can breastfeed. And that's something that if you're having trouble, or someone who has had trouble, like maybe it's the baby's having issues structurally, and that's not anyone's fault, right? But if you're not aware, you're not going to get it fixed.
And I would encourage moms to keep trying, even if you have to supplement formula, and just to keep pumping in the interim period. Like, you don't have to give up and just transition completely to formula and stop trying. Like, you now that I'm thinking about it, you could just be feeding formula and trying to pump on your own for like an indefinite period of time, because it's not going to affect your milk supply.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
So just keep trying. Like, I really think that a lot of people are giving up too soon because they freak out when their babies lose weight, but all babies lose weight.
Especially in the beginning. Yeah, it's true. I found breastfeeding to get in the beginning, when I found that, okay, I can do this, we're doing this, I was really happy. But by like the end of my 4th trimester, it was kind of like, the sort of loveliness of it had worn off for me. And like Magnus is a really active, like aggressive, like just constantly moving baby. So when he breastfeeds, like his arms are flailing a lot, he kicks a lot. And like he'll suck until I get a letdown, and then he'll just like pop off, like look up and smile and like wiggle around, and there's just like milk going everywhere. And then when he feels like it, he'll pop back on. And sometimes he pops on and off my breast like 5 times in a 15-minute feed, and I'm just like, dude, can you focus, please?
Focus.
So it's like the actual experience of breastfeeding for me, I don't really find it that fun unless it's at night, because when he dream feeds, he's just peaceful and calm and feeding, and he's not like going absolutely mental. And as much as I love the bonding experience of, breastfeeding my baby, like that element is important to me. I personally just find it very tedious and very, very exhausting. And there's so many things in my house that often need to be done that I'm just I feel paralyzed by the necessity of having to sit and breastfeed. Right. So I'm not one of these moms that's just kind of like, oh, breastfeeding is amazing and I love it. My baby is like so chill and this is something that we love doing. I wish I was that mom. Like I really do. Maybe in my next kid, I'll fall into it a bit better, but as much as I am passionate about breastfeeding, it's not something that I actually really enjoy. It's been a real struggle. And without knowing the science behind why it's so important, the long-term benefits, and like the breast is best thing, I probably would have given up.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for my midwife constantly telling me, this is what's best. You have to keep doing it. Keep trying. It's going to be worth it.
Definitely. Yeah. I just saw something so dumb in the live chat that I have to
okay, address
Somebody just said, this is such disinformation. If a mother isn't healthy or has mercury toxicity, she should not be breastfeeding. You can read Weston A. Price's homemade formula made with raw milk. Retarded.
Yikes.
That is so retarded. Okay, first of all, if a mother is not healthy, she's just gone through the entire pregnancy forming that baby in her womb. That baby's already exposed to whatever was going on with the mom. Not breastfeeding is the dumbest thing that a mom could do, even if she's not healthy, because she's still transferring really important immunobodies and ways to build up the baby's immune system early. And then feeding a baby raw milk, that baby's just going to get anemic and die. Like, what are you telling people to do, moron? That's so dumb. No matter what, unless there's like a real problem and you cannot breastfeed, it is better than feeding the baby formula.
Absolutely.
Mercury toxicity. Was she eating swordfish every day of her pregnancy? The baby's already going to be messed up then. This is crazy.
Yeah, that's really stupid. It's really, really stupid.
Really
the other thing that's really interesting about breast milk that so there are some resources in the description of this video for moms or soon to be moms, people who are just interested in the topic of breastfeeding, on some of the recent findings of the long-term benefits of breast milk. And not only is it it's kind of like you give your immune system to your baby as long as you're breastfeeding. It also helps to build up the microbiome. Some tests have been done and recent findings have proven that the microbiome that is developed in the first 6 months of life is something you actually carry with you for the rest of your life. And there's a lot of information out there on the microbiome and the way that it affects our mental health, behavior, like obviously digestion, which is a huge part of just like, if you have poor digestion, if you have issues medically with pain and chronic pain with your digestion, that can be debilitating. So the microbiome is huge. And definitely check out the links in the description on the microbiome that's shown by Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She's kind of like my go-to on this. That
video was so fascinating. It's weird because we watch it independently of one another. Somebody else sent it to me.
Yeah, so it's really, really good. Really there was something else about that video. About DHA. So a lot of formulas now are being like you will get DHA in the formula. But the formula the DHA that's in your breast milk is actually more bioavailable than the synthetic version of DHA that you'll find in formula. Sorry, did that just make sense what I said?
Yeah. So do you supplement the baby or do you just supplement yourself?
I supplement myself, and she talks about this in the video. So she takes 2 milligrams, I think, of fish oil every day, and that amount has been proven to get into the breast milk at an adequate level to provide for the baby's DHA needs. I'm personally starting to add purees into my baby's diet now because he's 6 months, and it's really important to me that I add in some extra pureed foods. And I have a little tincture of fish oil from a brand called Nordic Naturals. That's really, really nice. It's like a cod. I think it's cod. Is someone in the chat like annoying you? Should we just ban them?
So much. No. Okay. Because I do want to address, but what you're saying is important. So finish this.
Well, so after 6 months, if you're starting to slow down breastfeeding, the baby's not going to be getting enough DHA, which is really important for brain development. In which case, if you're slowing down breastfeeding and transitioning to purees, you can use a supplement. And this is a baby safe supplement from the Nordic Natural brand. And
Nordic Naturals, those are always the highest rated, prenatal vitamins. In America, really a lot of the prenatal vitamins are already fortified with DHA. So they're like made so you can just continue them through breastfeeding.
Exactly. And someone in the chat says cod liver oil is rancid. I've seen a lot on that. And I don't actually know specifically if that is true. People have been sending me information on cod liver oil being having a high oxidative potential, so it can cause cancer. But what I'm giving my boy is not cod liver oil. It's just a fish oil, and I'm not even sure if it's cod. It might be salmon. It might be wild salmon. But yeah, definitely people will advise to you to do cod liver oil and liver in general with babies. And that's from this Weston A. Price community of people, from the guy who was talking about raw milk. And from what I know, it's really dangerous to be giving babies that are too young these excessive nutrient bombs that their livers aren't actually capable of processing properly yet. Yeah.
Right. So yes, I did want to address this though, because he says raw milk has iron in the same fatty acid profile as raw milk. Breast milk is raw milk, you idiots. Do not listen to this person. You cannot give dairy to a child younger than a year. They will get anemic. Do not be giving your child raw milk, your infant child raw milk. Breast milk is an entirely different composition. They cannot metabolize cow's dairy milk. Don't do it. This is very dangerous advice. Yeah. I don't know where this person is even getting this. I just assume that they're trolling. I mean, they must be trolling. Everybody knows not to give their kid dairy under a year. Anyway, now I'm going to ban you, so you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah, please do, because that's actually dangerous. That's really dangerous misinformation that no one should follow. Literally, any formula off the shelf in your grocery store would be better than raw milk.
Right. Yeah. Very, very, very bad advice. I mean, ideally, you should be exclusively breastfeeding for at least 6 months.
Yes.
And then introduce some foods, unless you have a situation like yours where you've got to get your child's weight up. I think definitely introducing purees at 5 months was really beneficial to Magnus. That was a smart decision. And I've seen what you do on Instagram with your purees. Like you're all over it. You're doing a great job. So
yeah, we can maybe do a video about that later on down the line. Right. But it's quite fun to give him food. He gets really, really messy, and he's got a great appetite. Yeah, it's really fun.
Oh man. Oh, and then something else that somebody mentioned in the live chat that was very helpful for her breastfeeding experience and really helped me in the beginning is to get a nipple shield. And I know a lot of women talk about how breastfeeding is so painful, and then they'll tell you that you're doing it wrong if it's super duper painful, which I think is true. But your nipples need a while to acclimate to the sucking motion that's going on. In the beginning, my midwives and my doctors told me that, and I couldn't believe it, that a baby is actually pulling out more milk than an electric breast pump, which is just crazy to me.
They're super efficient.
They're really efficient, and it's like a tiny, tiny suction device, and it's sucking really hard. So your nipples aren't acclimated to getting that much action, and it does kind of hurt. And if you find that pain intolerable in the beginning, or if you're getting blisters or you're getting cracks or bleeding, then a nipple shield is really going to help. And it's also going to help change the direction of the nipples so that the baby is getting an optimal flow into their mouth. So I saw that in the live chat, and she said it saved her breastfeeding experience, and she would have quit if she didn't get it. So, and make sure you have the right size for a nipple shield. That'll really help.
Yeah, because there's different size flanges, right?
Right.
Because women have different size nipples, obviously.
Right. So if you're having problems breastfeeding, my suggestion to you, of course, is to talk to a lactation consultant. A lot of them are excellent and they're very, very helpful. If they tell you to do something that feels unnatural, I would get a second opinion or do some research or just do what feels natural and see if that helps. The nipple shield will help. I would pump to increase your milk supply. Do you have any other tips and tricks for getting the milk supply up?
Not for getting the milk supply up. I mean, well, like there's like wives' tales about oatmeal cookies. Because oatmeal is supposed to be something that helps with production. I think it's kind of more hearsay than anything else. I don't think there's any actual studies that prove that anything that you eat can improve the amount of breast milk that you're producing. But I have heard that, and I have heard women anecdotally say that it works for them. Another thing, though, related to milk supply that I think women can sometimes run into is oversupply.
Yes.
And oversupply is something that you can probably talk to a little bit. And in the beginning, I did, I had really bad clogged milk ducts that would come back every couple weeks. There are ways that you can unclog your milk duct without resorting to going to get antibiotics. Of course, if you have a fever, go to the doctor. Like if it gets to that point where you have the fever, then you're kind of like tapped out. There's nothing that you should do at home and just ride out a fever.
A warm compress will definitely help. Some Epsom salts. Yeah.
Epsom salts, warm compress. And I used to just like massage and express out the milk in a super hot scalding shower. And then also like having your baby just on your boob as much as possible, which seems counterintuitive if you already have an oversupply. But like you just said, the baby can get that milk out better than anything else.
Definitely.
So
are you the one that told me the trick about the haka, filling the haka with the hot water and Epsom salt?
Yes. And then you just like suction it on and the steam goes into your nipple. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good one.
Seems like a nifty trick. In terms of getting your supply up, I started having an oversupply only when I started cluster feeding, which is all I do now. I just cluster feed. But that kind of intermittent breastfeeding, like 30 minutes every hour and a half, just all day, that is really what's going to make your supply just shoot through the roof. So try to cluster feed your baby, although it's not really up to you. Like when your baby wants to eat, you can't make your baby eat.
Exactly. It's true. That's really true. There was something that I wanted to mention regarding pumping. And I think like when I sometimes say breast is best on Twitter or on Instagram, I think people who exclusively pump think that when I'm saying that, I'm not including them. There are some women, there's a friend that I know, she deals with chronic pain, and it just physically isn't possible for her to sit in a breastfeeding position for long periods of time. It's necessary for her to exclusively pump if she wants to have any quality of life whatsoever. Yeah. And I think that if your baby is getting breast milk, like that's awesome. However they're getting the breast milk, if it's at the breast or through a bottle, that's what I mean when I say breast is best. And I don't want to make anyone who's exclusively pumping feel like I'm leaving them out when I say that. And
that's difficult. That's got to be harder than breastfeeding because you're cleaning the supplies all the time too. And pumping hurts. It's harder. It's harder on the breast. I will say though that the mom is not getting the oxytocin release when she's just pumping, and you can't practice amenorrhea, lactation, birth control if you're pumping. Yes,
true. That's a good point.
You can get pregnant. So if you are just like, oh, I can't get pregnant, I haven't started my period yet, and you're only pumping or you're pumping frequently, like you can't rely on that as a birth control method.
Right. That's a really good point. The only other thing about pumping that I just wanted to mention is that your breast milk will change as your baby grows. And I have seen a study, it was only one study that said that there's information that's transferred into your body from the baby's saliva, and the baby's needs will alter and modify the breast milk as the baby grows. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm obviously not like a healthcare professional where I can say this is true, but it seems that that's what's happening. I think that if you are exclusively pumping, it would make sense to, on occasion, for no other reason other than to just update the information that your body is absorbing from your baby to
Right.
put your baby on your breast, so that your breast milk is, changing with your baby, and also not to leave your breast milk in the freezer for more than 3 to 6 months, because obviously breast milk that you pump at 3 months is not going to be adequate for a 9-month-old baby. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And along those same lines, I know this is a huge pain in the ass, because when you pump, it's so much work that you're like, this milk, it's gold. Like, I can't do this again. But you need to be pumping at the same time that you're feeding that milk to the baby, because at night,
super important.
It is really important. I know it sucks, but it's really important, because at night your body is giving melatonin to the baby through the breast milk. So you're going to end up in a reverse cycling situation, maybe long term, if you get into the pattern of feeding a baby nighttime pumped milk during the day, or the opposite. And I know it sucks, because pumping is just the worst, but let's talk a little bit about people that are voluntarily choosing formula because of ease, or because of work, or because they think it doesn't matter.
Yep. I think a good place to start with regard to this topic is the now very popular and widespread slogan, "Fed is best." I have a lot of problems with this slogan. I understand that it's been designed to help women with the crippling shame and guilt that they feel when they have no choice but formula feed. And there have even been some cases where some mothers have accidentally starved their children, their babies, because they so don't want to use formula. That's not okay, right?
No,
we need to avoid that from happening as much as possible. If you are trying to breastfeed your baby and for some reason you can't, you have nothing to be ashamed of. And I just want to make that clear right off the bat. If I've ever made anyone feel that I'm like finger wagging and shaming women who are trying to breastfeed but can't, I really apologize. And that was never my intention. But for the women who, like you said, are for convenience or sometimes ignorance, there have been a lot of people in my replies lately who have been saying, formula is just as good. I was formula fed. Look at me, I'm fine. Like this kind of sort of apathetic ignorance towards the actual science regarding breast milk and why it's so important in the long term. I mean, it can even, people who are breastfed even have less cases of cardiovascular disease and diabetes later down in life, like 30, 40 years down the road. So to say that it's the same and that just feeding your baby is all that matters, I think it does a disservice to women. Women are adults. Yes, we have feelings. Yes, postpartum is a very emotionally foggy and trying time. But we need to be honest with women about the fact that breastfeeding is so much better because it is so challenging. It is such hard work. It is so difficult. And without that incentive, why would you? Why would you put yourself through it? So I think Dr. Rhonda Patrick in the video below, she modifies that slogan just slightly. And I really appreciate that modification because I think it's compassionate. And she says, feeding is fundamental. And it is.
Yeah.
But breastfeeding is best. Yeah. And that's what I really hope that anyone who's listening, who's considering like, well, is it really a big deal? Will understand, And I see on Facebook, I'm anonymously in a few Facebook mom groups, and like some of the excuses that I've read is like, I need sleep. It's fine. I can't function without sleep. So
I don't understand this argument, because feeding a baby with a bottle, unless your husband's doing it, then I don't know how that's going to help your sleep pattern. I mean, I get so much sleep because I co-sleep with the baby, and she's in such a position that she can latch anytime she needs to. If she was sleeping in another room and I had to get up and feed her multiple times, and I would be getting so much less sleep than I am. It's breastfeeding that is allowing me to be on such a sweet sleep schedule. It's exclusively breastfeeding. So I don't really understand that. And also formula feeding seems like it's more difficult because you have to do so many dishes. Like just the twice a week, I've got to sterilize all the pumping supplies. I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. I hate doing it. And I just can't imagine having to do that every day. You have to sterilize once a day, and then you have to wash after every use, and you can't mix batches of formula or of breast milk. So it's like it's so much more work. In the meantime, I'm like walking to my local coffee shop, and my baby is I'm in the front pack nursing, and I'm like, oh, the baby's nursing. I didn't even notice. And you can't do stuff like that. You gotta bring the bottles, and you gotta bring the formula, and you gotta bring all
and
this.
Have the like special thing that keeps it warm. And
it just seems like it's so much more work. Like it's
I think so too. I think so too.
Oh, we didn't even talk about women that have adopted children and stuff like that too. Obviously, obviously this doesn't apply if you have a surrogate or if you've adopted children. You know, I do want to be clear that like we never wanted to create this so that we could mom shame people. Yeah. Because I hate that. And now that I'm on Instagram and it's like this positive mom community, I'm like, I don't want to be that bitch. It's so lovely. Yeah. I don't want to be that bitch that's like, you're fucking up your kid. You're messing up your kid. But if we're being honest with ourselves, there is a huge proportion of women that are voluntarily breastfeeding because of convenience and I've heard this a few times, because of vanity, because they don't want their boobs to get destroyed.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
And I hear that argument because my boobs, disaster. It's terrible. They've never looked worse. It's just awful. But you know, it's part of motherhood, and I'm like, this part of my body just belongs to my baby now, and I'm too tired to be sad about it.
That's kind of how I feel too. Yeah, I think, you know, with the fed is best thing, if it really feels like sometimes there are people that are like clearly left-wing moms who are not breastfeeding because of work or whatever. It seems like not such good justifications, but I think that regardless of your political affiliation, I think the fed is best thing can be somewhat appealing. And I struggle sometimes because I don't want motherhood and breastfeeding and talking about these things to be like some sort of sacred cow that exists outside of the realm of criticism. You know, like we have to be able to say, for the benefit of the women who are not yet mothers, who are trying to practice informed consent about what decisions they want to make for their child and their family. We have to be honest about these things. And, you know, my heart really goes out to anyone who's had trouble. The adoption thing as well, like that's got to be really hard, especially if you're in a remote location. It is worth noting though that if you don't have breast milk, you physically can't, or, you know, you've adopted and you don't have a milk supply personally, in some of the larger, more metropolitan areas, you can sometimes find access to donor milk and milk banks, which is an incredible service, which I would highly recommend anybody avail of if they can't physically breastfeed their babies themselves. Breast milk, full stop, is better than no breast milk. Yeah. So definitely consider that, you know, if you've adopted or you have physical problems with breastfeeding.
And they do screen the donor milk, and I believe they pasteurize it too. So you're going to lose some of the benefits because of the pasteurization process, but you won't have to worry about viruses and bacteria being transferred from the donor to some degree. But I think that's probably superior. I'm sure it's superior to formula, any kind of formula.
Yeah. I mean, there's the other thing that I've heard people say, and it's been said to me a lot of times, with regard to the formula, because the formula that I bought is an organic goat's milk formula that's made in Germany. I trust it. It has natural sources of DHA in it. There's no soy, there's no vegetable palm oils, there's no fluoride. Like, it's a beautiful formula that I would be proud to give my child if I absolutely had to. And people will say things like, you know, well, that's fine for you if you can afford to buy this expensive formula. And I think, on the one hand, yeah, like that's worth considering. Not everyone's in a financial position to be able to buy the best of the best when it comes to formula. But I mean, I'm not rich by any means. I budget for my family, and the nutrition for my family is like top, right? I wouldn't give my child a hamburger from McDonald's because that's all I can afford. I would do without, I would sacrifice, I would find a way to get whole foods into my child's diet. And I think that is possible if you're willing to sacrifice other things, right? I mean, like the price difference is like an extra $25 a month. You're telling me that you can't find 25 extra bucks a month from like the standard Similac? I find that hard to believe personally, especially within Canada where child benefit is exorbitant. Like, you can get upwards of $800 a month child benefit. I mean, what are you spending that on if it's not on things like the best quality products for your baby?
And I'm sure that you could get donor milk donated to you also.
Exactly. That's the other side of it, you know? So it feels like there's no good excuse that I can think of, which is why I rail on breast is best.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit too much.
No, I definitely understand. I mean, especially listening to stories from my mom, it's like, I just can't believe that people were lied to so much. And, I don't think my mom was breastfed now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, it's been like the past 100 years of people who were majority not breastfed. That's not good. That's really, really bad. We're probably the first generation since like 3 generations where there's more women breastfeeding than not, or in the very least trying to from the very beginning. And there's a link in the description as well from Stats Canada that talks about, these are obviously, it's their polls conducted in Canada, and I think there's like an 8-year lag on some of this information, but it is still relevant. Like, I think it's like 80% of women in Canada, they start off trying to breastfeed, which is great. Like, those are great numbers. It does vary between the provinces. Like my home province, Newfoundland, 50% of women are trying to breastfeed. And what's interesting is that there's a correlation between women who start off trying to breastfeed and your marital status and your age. It shows in the polls that if you are 30 plus, you are far leaps and bounds more likely to breastfeed than a woman who's in her early 20s, as well as if you have post-secondary education. Women who are educated, who've gone to school, are far, far more likely to breastfeed their children than women who don't, which shows that, and also married, if you're married and you have a stable relationship, you're far more likely to breastfeed. So if you get women who are accidentally getting pregnant out of wedlock and who are uneducated, which that's kind of the archetype of most women in Newfoundland, unfortunately, you're going to get a lower percentage of women breastfeeding, right? Which is why I feel like breast is best, and saying it and spreading this information is so important, is because we tend to think, if we live in a bubble, like us older moms who are educated, and we're like, duh, of course breastfeeding is best. Like, everybody knows that. No, actually, not everyone knows that. And not everyone are in, circumstances in their lives where they feel like that's something that they can take on as like a young single mom, right? Like that would be horribly, horribly difficult.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I guess that I just don't understand the reasoning behind thinking that formula feeding is easier. And I know some people are actually like grossed out by the process of breastfeeding. I think that I've heard that too. Like I just don't want to. Do you know a chick named Shay Mitchell?
No,
she's like, she was on some like Gossip Girl or some stupid, I don't even know how I found her YouTube channel, but it was recommended to me. And so I watched one video. It was her birth video. And she was like adamant that she was not going to breastfeed. And her husband was like, you're going to breastfeed. It's what's best for the baby. And her reasons she ended up breastfeeding eventually, but her reasons for it were ridiculous. She's like, I want ownership of my body. I want to be able to feed the baby when I choose. I think that the process is like weird and stuff like that. And I'm like listening to this and I'm like, I just couldn't believe what was coming out of her mouth. And so when I started doing research about this, like I saw a lot of women that were like, I just think it's weird, like having your baby suck milk out of your, it's like, you just push that baby out of your vagina and you're going to tell me that like, this is the weird part. It's weird. Yeah. Like, all right, these are all ridiculous excuses but I'm happy that she ended up breastfeeding. I'm so ashamed that I watched that video, but like, I was so sucked in. Well, everybody's birth story, I want to watch all the birth stories.
It would be really, I'm the same. I found myself going down these rabbit holes and finding myself in very questionable places on YouTube. Yeah. But it would be nice, if it were the case that, the stigma around breastfeeding publicly or at all, as well as the education about breastfeeding, was more widespread. I think that unfortunately, though we wouldn't like to admit it, there are a lot of women who feel the way that girl feels, and just wouldn't, because they don't want to.
Yeah. Let's talk about the stigma of publicly breastfeeding, because
sure, I struggle with this massively.
Do you really? Okay.
I do. Yeah, I do.
I saw some Joey Salads video where like women were breastfeeding. Like one hot chick was hanging out with her boobs out, and then there was a chick breastfeeding, and people were coming up to the breastfeeding woman being like, that's disgusting, blah, blah. And I was thinking like, well, no, there's no way it's real. There's no way it's real. Yeah. I breastfeed openly. I have never once used a cover in public. I breastfeed openly. I just don't care. People can go to hell. I breastfeed like a few weeks ago, I was breastfeeding. It was like a Saturday night and I was breastfeeding her while I was going to get sushi with my friend. And there were people everywhere, like drunk people partying, whatever. And that night was the only night that people have even looked at me sideways, like even looked and been like, nobody said anything to me. And I was walking down the street, openly breastfeeding. You could see
amazing.
And I just do it all the time. And then most people just don't even notice or don't think that it's weird. And I'm adamant about this doing it without being covered thing, because when the baby is covered, you can't see what's going on. You can't see if you have a good latch. And babies don't like to be covered, because what they're doing when they're breastfeeding is they're looking at you right in the eyes. Yeah. So when you cover the baby, you've disrupted the bonding experience that you are having with the baby. And the other argument I get from people is like, oh, this is something private. It's meant to be done behind closed doors. My baby eats for a half an hour every hour and a half. Yeah. You want to tell me it's impossible to do anything. I would never get anything done. It would hinder my ability to be a good wife, because I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to the grocery store. I couldn't run any errands if I were not openly breastfeeding all the time. And what's more important than people being weirded out because they see my boobs is my baby eating. And the irony of all of this, you know what makes me so mad about this? 90% of 10-year-old boys have seen hardcore pornography. That's crazy to me. So like people are going to act like they're offended by seeing a breast, feeding and nurturing a child. But like earlier in that day, they watched a hardcore gangbang or something like that on Pornhub. It's like, I can't even believe what's happening to society. So I'm going to do it openly, and I'm going to be unabashed about it. And I don't care if you think it's immodest. I don't care if you find it offensive. Because I'm doing what I need to do for my baby, and you're just going to have to deal with it. That being said, I have faced almost no objection from people, and I think that women should just do this more. Like I see it at church sometimes, just like open breastfeeding. I'm like, rock on.
That's awesome. I feel like I wish I was more like you. Like it's not other people. Like in Canada, it's like, encouraged to breastfeed wherever you want. There would also never be anyone who would be like, oh my God, she's breastfeeding publicly, or having a problem with it. I just feel I don't want to cover my baby's head, like you said. And he also, when I put something over his head, he takes it and rips it off like immediately, like clockwork every single time he does it. So I don't feel comfortable covering him. I also just feel really uncomfortable hauling my boob out in front of strangers. I just feel like if my brother is staying with us right now, I can't even do it in front of my brother. That's how pathetic I am. It's ridiculous. No. I'm like, I'm going to feed the baby. And then he turns his back and walks away. Like he doesn't want to see me breastfeeding as much as I don't want him to see me breastfeeding. It's like maybe like just like a family thing where we're weirded out by nakedness or something. But
no. I mean,
it's really hard for me. And like you said about how if you weren't doing this, it would impair your ability to like live a normal life. That's 100% true, because that's how I feel. I feel like if I'm going out, I'm like, okay, I have max 2 hours because I don't want to feed in public. And I'm like awkwardly trying to tank the baby up before we leave. He's like, I'm not hungry. Why are you feeding me? Like, leave me alone. You know what I mean? And I get crippling anxiety whenever I'm out for more than 2 hours, because I'm like, the baby needs to be fed, but now I have to feed outside, and I'm just like a neurotic mess, and I hope that next time maybe I can be less neurotic about it. And I'm not sure what kind of outreach would help me with that. I don't know if it's just a personality thing where I'm just kind of like, I feel weirded out by strangers seeing my boobs. So it's like, it sucks. And now I have done it. I have it like Tim Hortons last week. The baby was hungry, and the baby's hunger overrides my awkwardness. So I fed him, and there were like a couple teenagers that I made eye contact with, and I wanted to die. But that's just what you had to do to get through the situation. I just wish that I could feel a little bit more like you about it, where it's just like, screw you if you have a problem with me breastfeeding. Like I would love to feel that way.
Yeah, but it's a personality thing. Like I'm not conflict averse. And so I wait for the day that somebody says something to me. Like you come up and I'm always wearing these like big
like ready.
Black, I'm ready. I wear these big black cat eye Versace sunglasses everywhere I go. And I just look like a bitch. I wear them inside. I wear them when it's cloudy outside, and I'm just openly breastfeeding. And I just can't imagine somebody coming up to me and saying something to me, because I'm just too scary. I'm just
I
too
know
scary.
the sunglasses that you're talking about. You were wearing them when we were on a trip, and I could just like picture you now, like a total badass breastfeeding in public. Like, come at me, I dare you.
Just I've got everything locked and loaded. I've got all the reasons locked and loaded. Like if it were a woman who said something to me, I would just be like, well, you know, you walk around with your fat ass and everybody has to see that. And I'm just ready, you know? So, you know, it's a personality thing. You're probably more modest than I am too.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't feel like I could wear like a bathing suit in public, and like that the only difference is that like the space right here is covered up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
it's just I don't know, it's just a weird thing. I don't know why I feel this way. Maybe it is a modesty thing, maybe it's just like an insecurity thing, or just like being hyper aware of like, you know what it is? That's what it's being hyper aware of like what other people are thinking. And I get in my own head like, you know, oh, these people are staring at me and I don't want people to look at me. Like, I just want to be in my private space breastfeeding my baby, you know?
That's true too. And that's legitimate. Yeah.
There's been so many times where I've just gone into like the bathroom and just breastfed on like the toilet with the seat down and just been like, I hate this. Why am I like this? I don't know.
No, I understand. I mean, but then I want to encourage people to think about a person you passed in the street 10 years ago. I mean, what happens in life is that even people you knew pretty well 10 years ago, they just kind of drift into the ether of your brain and just become nothing. And I just can't even imagine that anybody would log that judgment of you in their memory long term.
It's so true. It's actually very narcissistic to think that anyone gives a shit. Really?
No, it's not narcissistic. It's just you're just feeling insecure, and it is something that's like personal and intimate that's going on with your baby. Oh, she's got some letdown. So there are two questions in the live chat that are on this topic. So Tara says, "Can you share any resources on breastfeeding while baby wearing? My baby is 5 weeks. I'm definitely wanting to try this out." For being able to be more mobile while feeding her. And then another question that came in is from Paulina. Blonde, you mentioned that you've nursed your baby in your baby Bjorn. I'm completely dumbfounded in how to position the carrier to be able to get him to latch. Okay, so these two questions are similar. I think I can answer them in one fell swoop. The baby Bjorn carrier, it's a front carrier. And the way you latch the baby is you put it onto the side that you're going to breastfeed. And then you loosen one of the back straps so that it's totally moved to the side. And then the baby should be looking up at the nipple, and you just wear something where you can just pull your top up or down, and then the baby can latch from below on the one side while sitting on your hip.
That is genius.
It's so easy. I breastfed in the Moby wrap for a little bit, and I was just like, it was just too stressful. Like
my baby hated it.
Yeah, and it's too confining. Yeah. But the baby Bjorn, like she'll be breastfeeding and she'll just have her arms just like in her legs kicking around, and it's totally fine. And it's also really helpful because she can't scratch me or anything like that because her arms are to the side. So the baby Bjorn carrier has just been money when it comes to being mobile and breastfeeding. And so that's what I use 100% of the time. So I hope that answers both of your questions. And your baby's 5 weeks old, so that's going to be like the sweet spot when you're breastfeeding the baby Bjorn carrier. People won't even be able to tell, especially if you're wearing black. They won't even be able to tell that you're breastfeeding because the baby's head is underneath that little the carrier part. So
I'm gonna get one of those for next time. Magnus just hates carriers in general. He's like, I don't want to be restricted ever. Yeah.
And this is just a difference in our babies. Like I have this fat, slovenly baby who just wants to eat and sleep all the time. And so it's super easy to do stuff with her. For like a really active child that doesn't like to be carried, there's going to be a different experience for sure.
I think there was another super chat that just came in. Oh no, there's one here as well from Fro Katzi. You're doing great, ladies. I breastfed my two in the 1970s, and there were glitches when I almost quit, but stayed on the course. The midwives sound like a good development. Yeah, I honestly would have probably given up at some point, or in the very least compromised my milk supply by doing formula feeding. If it wasn't for my hard ass German midwife who was having none of it at any point in the experience.
Yeah, definitely. Was there anything else that we wanted to talk about?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to know your opinion on working moms, because we didn't touch on that. Women who are either struggling to breastfeed at work conditions maybe not being very conducive to being able to pump, and women who would be kind of like, I would rather go back to work. Because I have women in my family who are like this, who are like, they cannot wait for their postpartum to be over. They can't wait to drop their baby off at the daycare, and they cannot wait to be back to the real world and back to work. You know, like, I don't know if it's like a Newfoundland thing or what it is, but like, these women exist. Like, don't tell me they don't exist, because they definitely do. And what do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time sympathizing with it because, like, now that I have a baby, I'm like, oh, this is what my job was always supposed to be. And it's like all those marketing and finance jobs I had, like any of that stuff matters, you know? So I have and then I'll leave for an hour. Like, I worked out this morning. I was gone for, I don't know, an hour and a half. And the whole time I was like, I just want to be with the baby. I miss the baby. I hate being apart from the baby, and nobody can do what I do with the baby, you know, in terms of early childhood care, newborn care. Like, dad can do some stuff, but babies want mom, and there's just nothing you can do about that. And so I just have a really hard time understanding the kind of woman that voluntarily relinquishes raising the child, the control of raising the child, to somebody that can't do the job as well, while still thinking that she's fulfilling her obligation as a mother.
It's crazy.
I think that it's a major, no matter which way I cut it, it's a major failing. And like, people will be like, but you know, the mom is doing things to help the family. Yeah, that might be true, but you can't tell an infant that. You can't tell an infant like, oh, well, mommy's going to go earn money for the family, because all they know is that you're not there. And that's what they remember. That's what they internalize, that you're, and no matter where your intentions are, you are an absentee parent to them. And that damages them in infancy. If you're acting like it's not going to harm them later, it is. Like, what you're doing is damaging your child. And I know sometimes it's inescapable because of financial situation or whatever, but I would urge these people, especially if they're paying for childcare, to really like look at your budget and see how much money are you really bringing in, and what that is worth to you. Because I bet in most of these cases, if you just seriously downsize your life, you can find a way for mom to be home. Also, if you have to go to work and your husband is raising the kid or whatever, like, and you want to be at home, at a certain point, women are going to do a cost benefit analysis and be like, why am I even married? Like, what's the point? What's the point here? You know, I have to bring home money. I can't be with my kid. I still have to do all the housework. It's like, you're really messing with nature when you're doing this. Yeah.
I totally agree. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was going to be my next question. You know, people will always say to me, who are in this situation, in replies sometimes, when I make this argument, they'll be like, well, I don't have a choice. I have to work. I have to work to keep my family afloat. And a lot of the time, I feel like I need to call bullshit on that, because I am not a rich person, and I am staying home to raise my kid. You know, we do without a lot. We never eat out. We don't go on like vacations. I don't shop for myself anymore. I don't shop for fun. You know, there are a lot of things that you can do to make the family budget manageable on a one-person income. Now, I get it. Like, if your husband maybe has like an injury, or he can't work for some reason, and, you know, that responsibility falls on you. I do think that the workplace, it can be a really tricky place to navigate pumping. And it would really suck to have to pump every 2 hours while you're at work. Like, that must suck, be so stressful. And I would really hope, I would hope that the workplaces would try to accommodate women who are in that situation. But I do agree with you that I think, most of the time, it actually is way more feasible to be at home, because you don't have the expenses of childcare. You're not paying for gas. You're not paying for the food out that you eat at the cafeteria for lunch. All these sorts of things really add up.
Yeah, and the commute and everything like that. Yeah. And I do hear this argument a lot from people like, you know, I just don't have any choice. I don't have any options. I have to work this job. But I'm like, do you really have to work that job. I mean, technically, both you and I are working moms.
Yeah,
but
technically.
I have my life situated in such a way that I can film with you while I'm holding and breastfeeding my baby right now. She's none the wiser. I'm just talking, you know. And then the 6 or 10 hours of work that I do for the podcast, my husband and my parents are watching the baby while I take a break in the middle to breastfeed. So my child's not really suffering at all, but I have designed my life in such a way that I can still bring income in for my family without neglecting any kind of childcare. And in this gig environment, and especially because of coronavirus, I find it really hard to believe that a working mom is not in some kind of situation where she could bring in half the amount of income that she's bringing by doing some kind of remote work without having to commute. Like, you don't have to have that job. You don't have to live in that neighborhood. You don't have to live in that house. You don't have to live in that city. You don't have to go to those places on the weekends. You don't have to take vacations. Like, scale back your life, because I can tell you right now, you're going to look back on your life and you're going to be filled with guilt and regret that you didn't do everything you could, especially if your kid has problems later in life. You're going to be like, what, you know, if she becomes, I don't know, some kind of drug addict or something like that. Like, I want to know that at least I did all the stuff that I could to prevent something like this from happening. So, you know, I'm just not super sympathetic to that. People act like I just fell into this life where I work remotely. No, like 6 years ago, I was like working a job where I was working all the time, and I was working in finance, and I'm like, I can't have kids like this. I'm like, I can't do this. So I quit my job and I created such a life before I had children so that I could do a little work while staying at home.
Yes. And I think that a lot of women would be surprised at how many different types of jobs that you can do from home. Everything from like working in the markets to and like selling crafty items, to selling baked goods, to having an online shop where you maybe like, you know, find something really sweet at a secondhand shop, then you like flip it and sell it online for a profit. Like, there's so many ways you could be creative and pull in that extra bit of income, even if it's just to cover the groceries. That helps, and that's worth something. You know, I think as moms, it's still important for a lot of us, even the ones who want to stay at home, to have something that gives us a little bit of purpose, that makes us feel like we're pulling money into our household and contributing. And I don't think that just because, you know, it seems difficult, that you can't figure that out if you just try and be a little bit creative.
Yeah.
Especially with the internet.
Yes, exactly. I actually did some editing work on Freelancer or something like that before I did this, just to get some extra money coming in. And that really helps. It'll really help out your husband if you can bring in even a few $100s a month.
Totally.
I just read this comment, and this is exactly the conclusion that I came to. Lady Mischief says, additionally, we work the numbers, and if I went back to work, all that money would go back into childcare. We have more money by me staying home. And that's true. Yes. And somebody that's totally disinterested in the long-term development of your child is the primary caretaker of your child. That boggles my mind, how anybody could do that to their kid, drop them off in daycare and act like you have no idea what's going on there. Did you hear this story out of Colorado a few months ago? There was like a false wall at a daycare, and they found 26 kids in the basement of this daycare, like dirty nappies all in the same room. They were getting beat and stuff like that. It's like, even if this review, it has the best reviews and blah, 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 somebody that doesn't care about your child is watching your child all the time, and you have no idea what's going on there. Like, you can't rationalize that. Why? So that you can drive a new car, so that you can take an annual vacation, because being a mom is so boring. Like, suck it up, you know, you got to make some sacrifices for your kids, because what's more important than you being the primary caretaker of your own child, the child you grew and birthed, that you put so much work and love and affection into? Like, that baby does not want to be in daycare.
No, definitely not. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I completely agree with you. There was one more super chat, but I think I've lost. Oh no, here it is, from Ovid. Thank you for your super chat. And they say, maybe someone mentioned already, but as a young man, I find it extremely difficult to avoid looking at low-cut shirts or exposed breasts. This makes me uncomfortable solely because terrifying being seen as a perv or predator. I mean, I get it. I get it. And I mean, the fact that you feel that way shows that you actually aren't a perv, right? That you're sort of having that empathetic perception of how what you're doing is being perceived by other people, but also someone like Rebecca and even myself, like we're not going to not breastfeed our child if they're hungry in public because of how it might make some dude feel. And also, I'm not going to be like, oh, what a friggin' perv, you're looking at me. No, exactly. I'm just going to be like, oh dear God, I'm so embarrassed. Oh, please stop looking at me. I'm so embarrassed. It's not going to be like, I would never, even someone who doesn't like it, I would never be like, you're a jerk for looking at my exposed boob. Like, it's an exposed boob. Of course you're going to look at it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. My comments about that. Yeah. It was only as far as like people would ridicule me. I don't like when I was walking around all those drunk people, some guy like looked at my boob and he was like, beautiful. He said that. And I was with my friend. And at first I was like, well, that's, that's weird. But I wasn't embarrassed and I wasn't like mad about it. Like I am walking around with my boob out. So, there might be some comments or whatever, but like, I don't think that guy is like some irredeemable piece of shit. He was just like, oh, titties. Look, there's some titties. It's fine. It's fine. I don't really care. It's whatever. And then a group of teenage boys, they were all like, yeah.
I just don't want like someone like what honestly goes through my head sometimes when there's like a pack of teenagers, boys or girls, is like, how people troll women on the internet with the word milkies. when like, that's what goes through my head, and I'm just like, no, my milkies are exposed. Why am I thinking about milkies right now? I hate this. Like, kill me. I just want to die.
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's another question in here that I wanted to address because I don't know what I'm going to do about this. This is Courtney says, thoughts on conceiving next child while breastfeeding, or will you wean first? I don't know what to do because I'm really obsessed with not preventing implantation. And so I'm worried that I'm going to get pregnant while I'm breastfeeding and that the act of breastfeeding will prevent a fertilized egg from planting in the endometrium, which does happen. However, it's really important to breastfeed. So I might just have to accept that that's something that may happen and just continue to breastfeed. I mean, hopefully my period will come back soon. I mean, right now I'm almost 4 months postpartum. I am 100% infertile. Like, no period, just nothing is going on down there. And I'm just kind of waiting. I mean, my mom got her period back after me in 3 months. And so,
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. But, the Latch League says it takes 12 to 18 months on average while you're exclusively breastfeeding to get your period back. So hopefully at a year, I'll have a return to full fertility and I can start trying again. But I'm really going to try not to wean before I get pregnant. And I'm just going to accept, whether or not it's unethical, that I may be preventing a fertilized egg from implanting. So I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen. The answer to that lies with when I'm going to start my period. When, if ever, I start my period.
Yeah, I feel very similarly. Me and my husband were talking about this only a couple of days ago because I am like itchy for another baby, which is like crazy because I can barely handle the one that I currently have. But we feel this pressure where we're like, we want a big family. I don't want to be pregnant at 40 if I can avoid that. That would be friggin' awesome. But also, like, I'm 6 months out and there is no sign of my period returning yet. Now I have, like I said earlier in the stream, started to introduce purees. Although I am not replacing any feedings. What I'm doing is I'm feeding him the puree once or twice a day. And then I'm washing it down with breast milk. Right. Yeah. So it's like a supplementing type thing that I'm doing. I'm not replacing, I'm not weaning right now. So it, like you said, it remains to be seen whether or not I will be able to wean him. I'm not going to force wean my son. Mm-hmm. If I'm still breastfeeding at a year and it's preventing me from having my period and I can only have 2 kids or 3 kids instead of the 5 that I want, like, so be it. Yeah. I would prefer him to have the breast milk than for me to be just like pumping out babies as fast as possible. And it hurts me to say that because I really want a big family, but I'm also not willing to do this thing where I'm sacrificing quality for quantity with regard to my family.
My thoughts exactly. Yeah. And then, if anybody has struggled with fertility and you have one kid, you're kind of like, if this is the hand that I've been dealt, like, I'm happy. It's about getting that first kid, and you're like,
out of the way.
yeah. And you're like, oh, thank God. Like, thank God. So even if I ended up just having one kid, it wouldn't devastate me. It wouldn't ruin my life. Like, I'm so grateful to have this baby. But I do want, as many children as God will give me. So I don't know. I mean, it just depends on what happens. I'm trying to just give it up to God and not worry about it and not be too neurotic. I saw a few other questions that we should answer before I get this pot roast on. Eugene says, will Rebecca become Orthodox as well? I've actually been looking into it.
Interesting. We haven't spoken about this privately yet.
But I do have a lot of Orthodox friends, and some of them came from Catholicism, and I've been listening to Jay Dyer a lot.
Yeah,
and
he's awesome.
I think that he's really come to some sound conclusions about Catholicism and about the path to Orthodoxy. And when I read about Orthodoxy, it feels a little more right.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm surprised to hear you say that, but I'm really happy at the same time. Have you possibly found any videos by Father Josiah Trenham? I'm going to send you some afterwards. He's an Orthodox priest who his parish is in Riverdale, Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah, he's in the belly of the beast, quite literally. And he is just the coolest guy ever. He has 10 kids, and he came from Protestantism, and he converted to Orthodoxy, and he has some of the most amazing content.
Okay, cool.
Giving an appraisal of Catholicism, giving appraisals of Protestantism, and then like making Orthodoxy digestible for people who are interested. I'll send you some links after the stream.
I feel like Orthodoxy is less cucked on immigration, maybe.
Big time it is.
Yeah. And then I initially got into it because I was listening to this podcast called Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls. And it's this Orthodox couple from Jacksonville, Florida. And their content was so good. But then they've like really cucked on coronavirus. And they've done some episodes about tolerance and racism where I'm like, ugh. I don't know how I feel about this. So I'm kind of backing away from their pocket. But they are the ones, and Jay Dyer are the ones that made me start thinking like maybe. And then I hate this Pope worship, which you guys don't have to deal with. Yeah, you're a catechumen now, aren't you?
Not yet. So I'm like, I would be a catechumen like a month ago, but both my priest and my priest saw this in me too, as well as my husband. They were like, you cannot join a church out of passion. That is the wrong reason to join a church, because I'm just like, my heart is so happy and excited for going to church and learning about Orthodoxy. I've never felt this way about church or my Christianity before in my entire life. And they were like, no, you need to join a church out of faith and out of like knowing that this is the right thing for you, not just because you're excited, right? So I'm very appreciative that both my priest and my husband are like, they're making me take my time. I'm studying a lot. I ordered my Orthodox study Bible, which I'm going to start reading as soon as it gets here from Amazon. And my husband is like sold. My husband went to Latin Mass his whole life.
Oh, really?
And and he has a lot of issues with Catholicism. And one of them is the Pope thing. Like, he doesn't believe, like Catholics will say that the Pope is Saint Peter's mouthpiece. He is literally like Saint Peter speaks through the Pope of Rome, right? And he doesn't believe that. And Father Trenham has a lot of good points to be made on that as well. So I'm following my husband's lead, which feels so right. I'm so happy that we're doing it together. I will become a catechumen when my priest believes I'm ready. We're still like sort of courting the church and going every Sunday, and our priest will come for weekly visits to talk to us, to get to know us better so that he can guide us adequately. So it's really exciting. It's super, super exciting.
I mean, the Pope is but a man, and especially this Pope, I'm like, ugh. Like, it's very easy to see how corruptible the church is. And I know that's not really that much of an argument, because all churches are corrupted because they're congregations of men. And we're fallen. But it seems like Catholicism is like cucked big time on a lot of these issues. And so the pre-Vatican II churches do appeal to me, but they won't bless my marriage. So I don't.
Wow.
unless my husband and I live side by side as brother and sister for 6 months. And let me tell you what he's not going to
do. Well, I'll tell you right now. So one of the first questions that I asked my priest was, does the Orthodox Church acknowledge the fact that I'm even married right now? Because I only have a civil union with my husband, and the Orthodox Church does acknowledge legal civil unions that are conducted by like a justice of the peace. Now, he still said that when we become catechumen, we will go through the catechumen process, confess, take our first communion, be initiated into the Orthodox Church, and then he would be happy to bless our marriage if that's something that I want. Yep. And it's like not a problem. There's nothing that I have to do except become Orthodox for me to be able to do that. So that's something that if it's bothering you, at least with
my husband is unbaptized though.
Right. So, I mean, what's cool about Orthodoxy is that they dunk you. I would love, I want pictures of your husband being dunk baptized.
Yeah, really.
I mean, it's a lot. I feel like for a secular person who's like maybe curious or interested or just even open generally, but apathetic towards Christianity, it's easier to get on board with Orthodoxy than like pre-Vatican II Catholicism.
Right. Which he's just not receptive to, because I was trying to get the marriage blessed. And so I told him, this is while we were trying to conceive. I told him what it was going to require. And they also said that we can't sleep in the same room during the 6 months.
Come on. It's just ridiculous. They
did also tell me that since my marriage is not recognized by the church, that I could find somebody else too. And so I was absolutely
that's appalling.
I found it appalling as well, because they were acting like, God first and then family. But I was thinking like, you're asking me to put church in front of family. And I'm like, I'm not going to divorce my husband because this marriage is real to me. It is real. It's real to the state.
Yeah. You're not supposed to put the church before your husband. It's supposed to be God.
Right.
Then husband.
Then husband. Yeah. So I really I really harbored some deep resentments about that. And then, that just turned my husband off to the whole thing. After that, he was just like, well, I'm out on this. Like I'm, this church thinks that I'm totally expendable. Is that what you're saying? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can't argue with that.
It's not right. It's not right at all. I really like the fact that if Orthodox priests like have kids before they become ordained, then they can have kids. You know what I mean? Like I feel like the Orthodox Church is more pro-family, and I'm into that. I feel like it's a little bit, even though it's supposedly like, more traditional and like older, it feels more flexible at the same time.
Yeah. And I shouldn't be like shopping for church flexibility, but I also can't allow a church to absolutely blow up my life.
Your marriage.
And my marriage. Yeah.
No,
which is very, very important to me, So wow, this has been a really good stream. I hope everybody learned something, and I'm sorry if we made anybody mad, but we're just trying to work our way through motherhood. These are both our first kids, and we're trying to figure it out. And this is just what we've learned so far. So
yes. And and I just want to say it one more time, because it really would hurt my heart to know that if something that I had said regarding breastfeeding was causing her to feel ashamed of something that's out of her control, neither myself nor Rebecca would ever want a mother who's trying to breastfeed, who can't breastfeed, to feel ashamed of herself. If you've tried and you've given it your best go, and for whatever reason you can't, like, still pat yourself on the back. And I salute you for trying, It's not going to be in the cards for everyone, and that's okay. It is.
And that doesn't make you a bad mom.
No.
The things that the criticisms that we levied were really exclusively for people that haven't tried hard enough, or that are just doing this voluntarily for a variety of superficial reasons, of which there are tons of women that do that, So.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this stream. Check out the links in the description if you're looking for further reading material or video content regarding the biology of breast milk. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll be back with, more content in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.